This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Notorious 5, Part 5. When we left off, Pops Andy had taken Q and Angela's children to the hospital to visit Angela. And while he was there, the Queen Mother had enlisted the help of any and everybody to get her and Donovan's children's stuff out of Stephanie and Angela's estate. If you watched the bonus episode, then you know all about how Pops Andy felt about that and about his conversation with Angela when he came back to the hospital later that evening to have a private discussion with her. When Angela was visiting with the children earlier in the evening, she had a one-on-one conversation with Michael where she found out how Stephanie managed to manipulate him into hacking into the DoubleTree Hotel's computer. So the next morning, when Stephanie arrived at the hospital to have that conversation with Angela, Angela was seeing red. Stephanie didn't make it any better when she walked in making jokes instead of immediately addressing the issue and apologizing for manipulating her 12-year-old nephew. But Angela couldn't really blame it all on Stephanie, because she had a really long night. She was up most of the night trying to figure out how she was going to tell Q that she had information about Veronica that he could have used to find the children way earlier, praying that her husband and her brother-in-law both made it back home safe, and waiting on pins and needles to hear back from Pops Andy. When he left the hospital, he told her that he was going to have a conversation with Mom Brenda. He was going to try and see if he could get her to give him those letters that Donovan had her hold for him and only disperse if he came back dead. Pops Andy figured that if he explained everything to Mom Brenda, she'd at least be willing to let him read the letter that was addressed to him in her presence. He'd tell Angela what the letter said, and they'd work together to get in front of it. But early that morning, he stopped in to see Angela on his way into Donovan's office. Pops Andy told her that Mom Brenda didn't give him the letters because she didn't have them. She'd refused to hold letters on the condition that he might die, or that Q might die. She only had one letter left, and it wasn't addressed to either of them. When Pops Andy asked Mom Brenda what Donovan did with the letters when she refused to hold them, she told him that Donovan said he had another person that he could give them to, who would be legally required to keep them, unable to open them, and required to disperse them if he and Q died. When Angela asked Pops Andy if he had any idea who that person could be, Pops Andy told her that Donovan had a lawyer on retainer, and that would be the only person he could think of who would be legally required to do any of those things. Then Pops Andy said, my son had to have been manic. He had to have stayed up all night writing all those handwritten letters. Mom Brenda said he had a stack of letters that he wanted her to hold until his death. Who knows how many letters he wrote, who all secrets he exposed, and what all he confessed. So when Angela saw the smug look on her sister's face and the mischief in her eyes, she had no idea that True had talked some sense into Stephanie when Stephanie picked her up from the airport. So she was actually prepared to apologize. But before Stephanie could even say a word, Angela knocked the Mario coins out of her. And when the nurse and the security guards finally broke up the thriller in Manila, both of the women were having contractions. Stephanie's mouth was leaking, and her pixie cut was askew. Angela's custom hospital gown was open down the back, and her whole behind was out. The director of nursing was paging Maribel and Stephanie's doctor. But before Maribel got that call, she was doing an ultrasound on Anya. When she was finished, she said, based on my measurements, you're about 8 weeks and 4 days along. And that, Anya just cried. That DNA test was absolutely necessary. When Maribel got the page from the hospital, she looked at Anya and Ron and signed while saying, I know that this is a lot and terrible timing, but there's an issue. Apparently, Angela just got into a fist fight in her hospital room. She's contracting. I gotta go. Anya said, what? Okay, don't worry about it. Just go. We'll meet you over there. Maribel said, no, wait for the nurse. She'll get you checked out and scheduled for your next appointment if you need it. And get you set up at the lab so that you can go and take that DNA test. And she rushed over to the hospital to see about Angela. Meanwhile, Pops Andy's over at Donovan's office, trying to focus on the work he needs to get done. But his mind is consumed with the situation with him and his wife. He's been holding things down at Donovan's construction and architecture company since this whole situation with Veronica and the kids started. His main role is to oversee Donovan's office manager, his construction manager, and his junior architect. He was in the middle of reviewing some emails when the intercom on Donovan's desk phone lit up, and it was his secretary telling him that he had a call on line 1. He got excited. He thought it was Bella. When he answered, it was another woman. Annoyed, he said, "Why are you calling me? And why are you calling me here?" The woman on the other line said, "Anders, I had to do something. You blocked me on Instagram. So I thought that the best thing I could do was call you at the place where we initially ran into one another." Pops Andy said, "Well, you thought wrong, India. This is my son's place of business. I have work to do." India said, "Oh, really? I thought you told me that the only thing you've really been doing is okaying change orders, approving financial transactions, and attending a meeting here or there with one of your son's managers. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of work to me." Pops Andy could have kicked himself for telling this woman all of his business. He said, "That's neither here nor there. Didn't you get my message on Instagram?" India said, "No, that's not how this works. When you block someone, neither you nor they can see any of the messages that you sent one another. How about you act like a man and face me and tell me whatever it was that you had to say yourself? I'm on the phone right now." Pops Andy thought to himself, "Well, I certainly didn't know that. I guess that serves me right for trying to take the easy way out. I can't do this anymore, India," is what he ended up saying. India asked, "You can't do what, Anders?" Pops Andy said, "Whatever this is between you and I." India asked, "What are you going on about?" Pops Andy said, "This. What we almost did the day I met you for lunch. That message I sent you said that I made a huge mistake. And while it was nice running into you again and catching up, it's best that we let the past stay in the past. I was going through a lot and dealing with a lot, and I let my mind get away from me. But I love my wife. And I knew that if I didn't end things, my whole life would come crashing down around me. And it looks like that's what's happening. When you walked into my son's business, it was like I was going on a trip down memory lane." India said, "You told me that it was a pleasant surprise." Pops Andy said, "And that's where we should have left it. I should have asked you about your life, told you about mine, wished you well, and then passed you to my son's office manager, Dennis." India said, "Let me guess. Your wife found out about our little friendship. What? She has a problem with you having female friends? Anders, you should have just told her that you and I go way back. Back to before you and her even met. Matter of fact, give me her number. I'll call her and smooth things over." Pops Andy said, "Oh, for the love of God, woman, are you trying to get us both tied up in somebody's basement?" India said, "Well, if you can't give me her phone number, then just introduce me to her." And Pops Andy cut her off and said, "I don't have the kind of wife that a man introduces another woman to and says, 'Hey, baby, this is my friend India. She was my high school sweetheart. And when I went off to college, I heard she was cheating on me. So I dumped her like a bad habit. And by the time I found out I had it all wrong, you and I were engaged. Well, she and I ran into each other the other day and decided to be friends." India said, "I mean, that's what happened. It's not my fault that your life was miserable and I was bringing you joy and peace. So now you have to disrupt all that because she found out that we have been friendly? Did she make you block me?" Pops Andy said, "No. I sent that last message right after we met for lunch, and I left you at that hotel. I felt stupid, sneaking around with you and lying to my wife about where I was and who I was with at this old age. And I remembered that I love my wife, and she deserves better. And nothing good could come from our friendship." India said, "But you said something about everything coming crashing down. Pops Andy said, my wife questioned me about you yesterday. I'd already blocked you, because I'd already realized that I'd lost my damn mind. India asked, lost your mind? How? We didn't do anything, Anders. We were just being friendly. Pops Andy said, if that is what you call friendly, then you haven't changed at all. And no wonder more than 50 years ago everybody thought you were cheating on me. You were too friendly then, and you're definitely too friendly now. India said, I take exception to you saying that I'm too friendly. If I'm too friendly, then so are you. Pops Andy said, you're right. Thank God those Instagram messages can't be retrieved. Because if my wife saw them, she'd definitely say we were both too friendly. India said, you know what I think? I think your wife was getting close. She was suspicious. She was on your trail. And you decided to end things with me because you couldn't keep it from her. I'd bet dollars to donuts you blocked me on Instagram to get in front of it. Pops Andy said, I'm not a betting man, and I don't care what you think. I made a bad decision. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. Now you take care of yourself, India. And if you have any other construction needs, you be sure to call and ask for Dennis. He'll help you out. And if we see one another in passing again, hello and goodbye will suffice. India said, go to hell, Anders, and hung up the phone. Meanwhile, when Maribel got to the hospital, the medical director was waiting for her outside of Angela's hospital room. He said, Dr. Lopez, I know that this is a VIP patient, but this is ridiculous. 2 pregnant women fighting in the hospital is not going to be tolerated. Now you need to have a conversation with your patient, reiterate the hospital policies, and ensure that this does not happen again. Do I make myself clear? When Maribel said yes, the director continued. He said, now, neither woman wants to press charges. We can't ascertain who started it. The other woman isn't a patient here, and she isn't scheduled to deliver here. So we will be banning her from the premises as soon as everything checks out with her and her baby. At least until your patient is discharged. And if anything else happens, your patient will be banned too. Having had enough, Maribel said, you may want to run all of that by the hospital director. This might be above your pay grade. Come back and let me know what he says after you've made that phone call. Then she walked around him and into Angela's room. When she got inside, Angela was hooked up to a fetal monitor. Her contractions were about 25 minutes apart. Her blood pressure was slightly elevated. And she had an ice pack on her eye. Maribel said, Angela, what in the hell happened here? Angela said, girl, I don't even know. I just lost it. She had that stupid smirk on her face and was talking to me like nothing happened. Next thing I knew, we were all tangled up on the bed and security was pulling me off her tail. Maribel asked, off of whose tail? Angela said, my sister. Maribel said, wait, you were in here fighting Stephanie? Angela said, yes. See, what happened was, she had Michael hack into the hotel computer where Corey's going to be staying next week. I told her to come up here so that we can talk. But when I talked to her on the phone, she acted like she hadn't done anything wrong. Then to add insult to injury, I got a letter from Donovan that was really upsetting. So when she walked in, I was just seeing red. Then Angela dissolved into tears. Maribel said, oh, Angela, I'm sorry. I know you're going through a lot, but you can't allow yourself to get to this point. You've got to manage your emotions and temper your responses. Instead of answering, Angela handed Maribel the letter from Donovan. When she was done reading it, Maribel said, so that's why you asked me to walk Donovan through that memory tracing exercise. Angela said, yes, I did everything that I could to prompt Donovan to get Q and LJ to consider evidence and information that would point them in the right direction without coming out and telling them what I knew. Maribel said, Angela, you did the right thing. I can imagine how Donovan wouldn't see it that way though. And I can understand how Q might not either. But as a doctor, people tell me all kinds of things that I can't tell anyone else, no matter how important it might be to them. It's against the law. I could be sued and I could lose my license. And I know as a certified life coach, more importantly, it will stop you from being able to help more people. That's one of the reasons why I don't take too many family members on as clients. Here lately, I've been making some exceptions. Angela said, exactly. And everyone thinks I took a leave of absence from the ministry because of this pregnancy. But the truth is I'm afraid to continue in the ministry. Seems like every time I turn around, there's a conflict of interest. First, there was the situation with Deacon Davis drugging women. Then there was Amora hiding Michael because she didn't know if Donovan or Q was the father. And now Maribel said, wait, what? Donovan and Q were with the same woman? Angela said, girl, yes, that's a long story. Maribel said, oh, I got time. But first, let me make sure that these babies are okay. Angela said, I'm sorry that I've been such a difficult patient. When you're done with me, can you check on my sister and then I'll tell you the story?